All right, and we're live. So I'm joined today with Erick, the founder of Art Blocks. Obviously, that has changed the NFT industry and Ethereum in general as a whole. It's been incredibly impactful, especially over the past few weeks. We've seen a crazy boom. So we're very excited to have Erick. Thank you so much for joining us. I would love to start off by learning just a little bit about yourself. What was your background like actually before crypto? What were you doing before you got into Ethereum, the crypto space in general?
Hey, thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here. I spent the last 18 years of my life actually in the ceramic tile industry. When I
Wow.
was out of college, I didn't really have a job, and I came home and I started working with my dad, who had been in the tile business before and kind of quit. It's heavy; it causes broken toes, and I didn't really know much about it. So I actually got into doing closeouts, and after doing closeouts for a long time, I realized that I knew more about tile than I do anything else in the world. So uh, my dad gave me all the money that I raised doing closeouts to say, hey, start a business. And I decided that I was going to start a ceramic tile
Wow.
business. So that's really where I've been for the last 18 years of my life. It's a company in Houston called Lenovo Tile that concentrates on kind of contemporary higher end tile. And I work with architects, interior designers, and it's really amazing how the word block or tile or square has been involved in just about every part of my life for the last however long. The, the the tile world seems so far abstracted from what we're dealing with, but in reality, it's very much a design focused industry, and it's very much an aesthetic and curatorial industry, right? Like we were always known for having the most curated and like picking the coolest tiles and the coolest stuff, and I think above all having kind of like the best customer service. And uh, when you look at the crypto space, you have a lot of awesome founders that come up with awesome ideas, but sometimes they don't have a lot of business background, right? And it's not their fault, and you can always learn that, and you can always get in there. And I think, yeah, that background, 18 years of like customer service and like working with clients and really just kind of being there for people and understanding is a lot to do, I think, with where Art Blocks is today.
So I would assume you're full time on Art Blocks now. Is that correct? Have you sold off this business, or is someone
90
else managing it?
95 to 97%. It's a beautiful place to come to work every day. So the back showroom / conference room has become my office,
Okay.
and I spend my days back here on calls, pretty much 24/7. Yeah, every now and then, like I have a really important client that I'll still meet with, and it's kind of nice to get to share my journey. These are people that I've known for 18 years, right? So like they've supported me in my endeavors, and they've become friends, and it's not a matter of just walking away. It's like these people deserve my for me to be
Absolutely.
there for them. So it's really nice to get to share this with them, and they're all very excited. um, but for the most part, yeah, like it's we've hired a new CEO of Lenovo Tile, and it's kind of running on its own at this point.
Awesome. And so, how did you get onboarded into crypto? Was your first entry Bitcoin? Was it just straight into Ethereum? What was your first foray into the space?
In 2016, I had this like crazy need to buy one Bitcoin before the end of the year. So I like telling the story that I was at a New Year's party and I had like my Coinbase open, and I was like, fuck it, like I'm gonna buy. I had already bought like 3/4 of a Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin was like $800 maybe, or 1,000. I can't remember, maybe 1,000. I was like, man, I know this is stupid. Like I don't just have extra $400, but I just pulled the trigger like right before midnight, and I kind of had my full Bitcoin. And uh, then I started watching it like everybody else does, and of course I only knew to watch it on Coinbase, and there was this imposter on Coinbase called Ethereum. I was like, well, this one's only like $7. Like, what could it possibly? Are they trying to be like Bitcoin? It just felt weird because there was not that much to look at, right? It was literally just Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think Litecoin was added a little bit later. Uh, when you have no idea what you're looking at, like one thing's $800 and one's $7. It just so I ignored it for a couple of weeks, and then I don't know what happened, and maybe I read a story, and I was like, okay, wait, what? You can program it? That's cool. And I've always kind of been a hobby programmer. I've never actually been a professional programmer, but I always kind of dabbled. And I learned you could program money for the first time in my life in a decentralized way, and my brain literally exploded with the concept. And I had no idea how to process all of it. It just kind of happened really fast. Like the first thing I did within a couple of weeks of that, my best friend had a kid, and I didn't really know what to get the kid anymore. Like you can only get people diapers enough times as you get older. Like it just we don't need as many things, I guess, as when we're younger. And so I decided to write a smart contract to lock 10 ETH into his daughter's ETH account for however many million seconds equaled 18 years. So on her 18th birthday, she will have 10 ETH unlocked. And at the moment, it was $100 worth of ETH, right? So like it wasn't that reckless. There's no other way to get it out. Hopefully Ethereum exists by then. But it was just, to me, it was just like this proof of concept that just, helped me manage the insanity that I was kind of understanding with programmable money. So I did that. I got real excited about that, and then obviously then the whole altcoin thing happened, and I really got deep into that, speculating, and I had some fun with that. And then so I didn't really spend too much time on Ethereum because I also participated in a couple of scams. I think it's kind of a fast yeah. So I was like, oh man, like that didn't go. I just sent that person a few $100s. That didn't really go well. So I got a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Totally my fault, of course. And didn't really come back around until I was browsing Reddit and saw a post for claiming CryptoPunks. And I remember clicking that link and being like, oh shit, this is generative art. But I mean, I don't think people kind of looked at it as generative art necessarily. And during the time between writing the 18-year-old contract and that, I had been noodling on the idea of but couldn't really put my thoughts together on the idea of owning a digital asset, provably owning a digital asset. Like, I was like, I wonder if there's a way that you could somehow do a Magic the Gathering, because I played Magic the Gathering when I was a kid. I was like, maybe there's some way to correlate this, because it just feels like you can program this. And I had no idea what an ERC 721. I didn't even understand the concept of a non-fungible token. So I, under no circumstances, could take credit with coming up with these things. But then the CryptoPunks came out, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like that is what that makes sense to me right now. And it was generative art, and it was, I think, the idea that you can pack so much character into a 24 by 24 pixel image is pretty special. When you have 10,000 unique ones, it's even more special. So I then spent that day claiming my CryptoPunks.
Awesome. So that is a great intro. I do want to take a little break here, just to some housekeeping. If anyone has questions, this is meant to be a live AMA, so we would love audience participation. I see a lot of good mornings in the chat, good morning and good evening, depending on wherever it is. But if you have questions, please submit them. I do have a ton I want to get into, so just keep that in mind. So I would love to hear about how Art Blocks actually got started. I mean, we've heard about how got fascinated with this space, but when did you actually start Art Blocks? Did you think it would ever become what it was today? I imagine it was started as somewhat of a hobby, right?
It was absolutely a hobby. The first concept of Art Blocks came while claiming my CryptoPunks and understanding that smart contracts could produce provably pseudo-random outputs. And so I claimed a bunch of zombies, and I felt pretty greedy about that. And I was like, well, why can't I just click a button and it presents me with a 1 in 100 chance of having a zombie instead of me clicking it, claiming 34 zombies. And so that's kind of what one of the initial things, which is basically just a lottery, right? Like, so at that point, if you remember, if you were around back then, like there was this website, I can't remember if it was DApp Radar. There was a website that showed all these dApps that were in, they had a little bar for like green if it was live and red if it was in process. It was just kind of like things that were coming around, and a lot of them were lotteries. And I was like, okay, well, this is just a lottery. Like, why can't this be a lottery? And I also, in my background with creative coding, I had kind of dabbled in programming generative visual outputs through a concept called projection mapping, which is kind of when you take a projector and you put stuff onto a 3D surface by aligning vertices of some points. And that was my hobby and my kind of like artistic background before the blockchain. And I decided that it would be really cool to have an NFT that was actually interactive, but still provably what that NFT was meant to be, right? So if that NFT was meant to be a red triangle, maybe I can move the points so that I could align that triangle onto a 3D surface, but it was always going to be a red triangle, and it was always going to be a triangle. And so the idea of wanting an interactive NFT became really important because of my background in generative kind of visuals. And yeah, I mean, in 2000, I think at the end of 2017, I started talking to my brother and some other close friends here in Houston about this idea for, using kind of the byproduct of the blockchain to generate provable iterations of generative content. They were so nice. I mean, we would sit down and have beers, and they were just always really nice to sit down with me and like be willing to hear me out. Pete, who's actually a very active member of Art Blocks, and another gentleman named Matthew. But it didn't go anywhere, right? Like it was like the Venn diagram of creative coder that understands blockchain was really tiny and really far apart. And so just getting anybody to want to do it was just so hard. So many years passed, and then I still continued iterating. I paid some really brilliant developers named Block Rocket Tech to help me develop the original smart contracts for Art Blocks. And the idea of making this into an NFT kind of came around in 2019, and then in 2020 COVID hit. And when COVID hit in 2020, I found myself with like 3 extra hours a day. Learned how to code on Codecademy, which is just a website that teaches you how to code. Had never really built anything of any substance, and I learned Node, React, JavaScript, tinkered with the smart contract, and then in November deployed Art Blocks as a totally built from scratch hobby that has now turned into something a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So I see this, I guess, comment from the audience. I'll highlight it here. I'm sure you hear this every day, right? We all do. Whether you like, what are your thoughts when you hear that? Obviously, I would assume you don't agree with that, right? I mean, I just don't. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Hearing that every day in the media, crypto Twitter, just everyone's saying we're in a bubble. I've even speculated something like that too. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, I think it's very possible we're in a bubble. I think I mentioned this in our Discord the other day. You show me one crypto project of any kind that has not had a whoop, give me one example and why Art Blocks would be immune to that. Like, it is completely absurd to think that we would be the ones that break through and somehow never go with the crypto chart that every single project has. Yet I think that there's like a 20% chance that maybe we've created a new generational type of art, and maybe it's gonna go a little bit more horizontal. Maybe it's gonna drop, but maybe not as much as the 98% drop that we all experienced in 2018. So I do think there's a chance that we have created something new and something special. I mean, I think it's special because it's my baby, and I think my team thinks it's special because they're brilliant and they are working with us. But to answer that question, I'll kind of anecdotally say that about sometime early in the year, Wall Street Journal published an article about NFTs, and most of the article was about Roham from Flow and like all the cool stuff that he's doing. But the first paragraph of the article was a story about how we were doing like a little Christmas Secret Santa thing here at my office at Lenovo Tile, and I brought a CryptoPunk because I remember I spent $30 on the punk, but it was $20. But I'm the owner here, so I didn't feel like I was being too egregious by spending an extra $10. Although we try to keep everybody's gifts at $20 because we don't want people to feel like they have to spend more money than they need to. And somehow my dad got a $20 bill, and this warehouse guy got the CryptoPunk and traded for the $20 bill because he just wanted the $20 bill. And my dad later sold that CryptoPunk for $42,000, which today feels like he got robbed, but whatever. I think he made a very smart decision to sell it for $42,000. And it was cool. It was like the front page of Wall Street Journal, and it was like the first sentence. Got to talk about this anecdote. And I think what's really funny is I would read the comments, and the guy that wrote the article, it was like, just don't read the comments. Like, just don't even because you're really going to get crushed. And I was like, I'm not going to get crushed. And it really made me realize this, like, people that read the Wall Street Journal are intelligent human beings. It is completely unreasonable for me to be like, man, these people are stupid. They're not. Like, nobody that is not interested in self-education is reading that journalism. It's not even like a fun journalism. It's like self-education. Like, it's to learn about. Yeah, but I mean, it's I don't know. It serves a purpose.
I completely agree.
And so it just made me realize it's like these. I really believe that some people are too smart to be willing, are so smart, so intelligent that they are just not willing to kind of take a step back and immerse themselves and kind of understand what's going on. Because I do strongly disagree. I think digital art is just art, and we need to drop the digital part. We need to drop the generative part. We just need to be able to say this is art. And why are people stupidly spending money on digital art? Because it's famous. For the same reason that people stupidly spend money on special baseball cards, or to sit in special places at concerts where they're going to be seen, or at baseball games where they're going to be seen. I think that people that have more money, this is a really cool way that they can kind of, interact with society. So if you have a really famous CryptoPunk, or if you have a really famous Art Blocks piece, like there's an Art Blocks piece that sold last week. It's the Ringers that looks like a goose. I would venture to say that's one of the most like recognizable pieces of digital art in the world today. Not just Art Blocks, not just Ringers, not just NFTs. I just mean, in the traditional art world, somebody makes a painting, it sits in a gallery, 100 people see it, and then maybe it changes hands, and maybe 1,000 people have seen it a year later, and maybe 30 years later, 100,000 people have seen it. I would venture to say that the Goose Ringer is something that well over 100,000 people have seen, and it's less than 7 months old. So it's a famous piece of something, and there's only one of them. And so people are willing to spend money on something that is unique and recognizable. And I don't think to me, it just totally computes. And I just feel like the people that are completely against it, I think, are just very intelligent people. I hate how in the space people are like, man, people are so dumb. No, nobody's dumb. Like, they come from different backgrounds, and they come from different levels of rationality and understanding. And what we're experiencing is very irrational unless you really, really dive in and understand the core of what people are doing here, and collecting and sharing and participating.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot. How do you think about, like, in the crypto space, it's hard to imagine all of the people that are in Ethereum, that were in DeFi before, like, genuinely cared about art. They probably didn't invest in art, didn't collect art, etc. Do you think a large part of this is just pure speculation? I would love to know what percentage you think of Art Blocks collectors or people that mint part of the Art Blocks collection or purchase the art. What percentage do you think are really there to collect versus speculating?
It's hard to say. I think early on in Art Blocks, maybe like in the first few months, I would say that a significant amount of people were there to collect, and I think they're still there. I hope they're still there. I still see them in the Discord, and those are the people that we're doing this for.
Yeah.
I think that there's a very speculative nature in crypto, and I think that we are not going to be immune to it, and I think that's okay. We go out of our way not to cause any kind of additional FOMO than what is already there, and we try really hard, and there's only so much we can do. But I've made it very clear that our goal is to transcend the crypto space, right? Like, we are to me, the crypto people are going to be the de facto early adopters in Art Blocks and NFTs just in general, and I think that's cool. That's like my nod and say thanks to them, for being early. But our goal is to say this is recognizably the most effective or the most sophisticated algorithmic art that might exist in the world right now, and we want that level of craftsmanship that people put into to be the same level of recognition to someone that knows how to hold a paintbrush and paint oil on canvas. And so to do that, we have to really focus beyond the crypto space, because why are these artists not appearing on art registries all over the world? Is it because these art registries are scared to put them on there? I mean, I think the Ringer's piece was maybe the highest sale of a living Canadian artist of all time, or one of the highest sales of a living Canadian artist of all time. Like, sure, call that full speculation if you want. Like that, it seems like. I guess another thing I'll say is, we have this common meme in our Discord where people say, came for the flip, stayed for the art. I genuinely think that people really are learning about art because of Art Blocks in a way that they hadn't before. And I really, maybe I'm just kidding myself, think that we are appealing to a new generation of art collectors and art enthusiasts in a way that just kind of wasn't appealing or felt unreasonable before.
So Jack asks a question that I think is probably on your mind all the time, but how can you make it easier? Well, maybe not, but how can you make it easier for the general consumer that maybe doesn't have a bot helping them out, or just doesn't have a significant amount of funds to purchase something from Art Blocks? It seems impossible right now, he says.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be in the category of not having an unlimited amount of funds. I didn't get a geometry runner. It's probably one of the pieces that I've been most looking forward to on Art Blocks ever. I tried minting with 3,000 gas and didn't get one. So don't feel alone. But even at 5 ETH, that's such an insane amount of money. So obviously that's a different category in general. All I can say to that is you just need to wait. Like, this isn't going to last forever. We will have dozens of projects to mint from at the website at any given moment. And when there is a instance of Art Blocks where it doesn't sell out instantly, there's going to have to be supply and demand and competitive pricing between artists and art pieces to get to a point where people want to buy the stuff. And so there is no doubt in my mind that you're going to buy $100, $50, $100, $150 pieces of art on Art Blocks in the future. And if that never happens, then we will have created something that is completely just revolutionary beyond even what we think we've already done. And it will be a really big bummer if people can't buy for those prices. But like, if for 5 years we continue doing drops that all sell out at $5,000 a piece, like it's one thing, like when the economy falls apart, let's say we go into a bear market and everything that was selling for 3 starts selling for 1 or less. But if that doesn't happen, I don't know what to say. Like, it's really hard to say, like, you, dear artist, please sell this for $100 and cause a crazy gas war and give bots a huge advantage because people want to have that opportunity, even though these people are willing to spend $5,000 on your work with less friction, and $1 million is going to charity. It's just really hard to like make that decision and unless we do an edition of 1 million. But yeah.
So you mentioned how you are going to keep, helping this content come out through the Art Blocks platform. One person asked me in advance of this, do you have any concerns about diluting the market too much with Art Blocks pieces?
No, that concern was very, very, very strongly presented when we had minted 15,000 pieces on Art Blocks and we decided to open the factory up. And people were like, this is crazy. We're diluting the work. We're at 100 and something thousand now. What are we diluting? I mean, we're not trying to reward, we're literally trying to create a platform that people that can create algorithmic art can put it out there. If we don't do it, it's going to happen on another platform, which is fine. I have literally no problems with that. But like, it doesn't solve the dilution problem. Like, generative art has become a thing that people like to do. If you take all the PFP projects, they account for, I don't know, like 500,000 generative mints that have happened this year. Not like just well outside of Art Blocks. Like, if Art Blocks had hosted those, we might be at 500,000 mints. We didn't for multiple reasons. If not putting them on Art Blocks meant that there would be no dilution because nobody else in the world would be able to host this type of art as an NFT, we would have a different approach. We wouldn't necessarily say we're not going to keep diluting. We would just say we would recognize the fact that we're the only person in the world that can do this, and maybe take a slightly different approach or mindset as to like holding something that belongs to us. But that's not the case, and it just seems like it feels very artificial to think that Art Blocks would stop this process from happening simply because we're concerned about putting too many NFTs on the market. If there's a million like wallets in the world, or 167 million, I think is the last I read right now, if NFTs really are going to do what people think they're going to do, I mean, hey, you've got to make that decision. Like, you're either in this for the long term too, or you think this is all just like a big, bubble and it's going to pop, and you make your decision. I made a decision in 2017 when there was probably 10,000 wallets and 15,000 NFTs, that this was going to explode, and it has gone down, and it has gone up, and it has gone down, and it has gone up. You need to make that decision, and if you are in for the long run and think that if there's 167 million now, there might be 1 billion in 5 years, are we really facing dilution by going from 100,000 to 200,000 of something when 1 billion potential customers want that? So we just need to take a step back and just kind of consider like the macroeconomics of this, not just like the day-to-day, waves.
Absolutely, yeah. On a similar note, Ryan asks, what are your criteria for Art Blocks curated projects? And just as a quick aside, I did a little, obviously, research before this, and of course the process is fully centralized by Art Blocks. Are there any plans to decentralize this? I see pros and cons to both sides. I'd say probably more cons. I'm curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, there's 100% plans on decentralizing all sorts of things on Art Blocks, but it's not going to happen in the infancy of the platform. Like, if the baby can't feed itself, it does not need to be like given, autonomy yet. And I think that a huge mistake that happens in crypto, and I think a lot of it has to do with, just the massive amounts of money that people are talking about, is when people give up ownership or centralization too early. And, Flow gets flamed all the time for, being centralized. But geez, if they really want to be around in 10, 15 years, like, hold on to those reins for a little bit longer. Like, the world's not going to fall apart yet. And I would say the same for Art Blocks. Like, we want Art Blocks to be as crypto native as possible. But we want Art Blocks to be crypto native when the rest of the world is crypto native, not when it's like this niche market of 15,000 people that know what Art Blocks is crypto native. Because we want to give people, early adopters, an advantage. Well, early adopters that bought Chromie Squiggles for $40 and are selling them for $30,000 a piece, that's kind of self-imposed their own advantage that they really can take advantage of. Like, we don't need to literally give advantages at every single step of the way. So until Ethereum and until crypto is more well recognized and understood by the general public, it's completely unreasonable for me to think that we would hand over control to a very small amount of people that in, the long run might be here for the flip only and not stay for the art. So to answer the question on how we curate, we have a board of curators. There's 25 people that come from the traditional art world and the NFT space, investors in Art Blocks, and just collectors and artists. And they deliberate on every piece, and they make very tough decisions on whether the artwork is worthy of being a curated piece. And what people have to understand is that if it's not curated, it doesn't mean that it's not a brilliant piece of art. Perfect example is Octo Gardens by the same artist that did the Geometry Runners, Rich Lord. Like, that was a brilliant piece of art. What the curators are looking for is variety. And variety across 1,000 iterations is very complex, and it's very subjective. And we get very different responses and opinions from the curators as to what should get through and what doesn't. Like, you would just think that there'd be like a clean cut yes and no. It's like a tie very, very often, right? So very subjective. But the idea is that we want curated, and I don't vote on the board for like very obvious reasons. Like, I just don't want to be influencing that. I want these professionals to influence that, and I also don't want to be buttered up by artists. Like I'm kind of a pushover when it comes to like good art, and I just don't, So it's like, we want things that are going to highlight what Art Blocks can do for this generative world. And it could be the most brilliant, beautiful project, but if it already kind of has some similarities to an existing curated project, maybe, maybe it's just as brilliant, but maybe it needs to not be curated, so that we're kind of giving people some variety and in creating this in this collection. But yeah, that's the curation process. It takes about a week. We present about 9 projects to the curation board every week. They have time to vote. They vote on like 4 different metrics, including technical proficiency, originality, variety within the script, and then also just kind of a little bit of the background of the artist, right? Because if you have an artist that creates something that's really simple, but they've been working on that in the traditional art world for 20 years, that's like their MO, they shouldn't be penalized for having had success in the traditional art world with a signature, like a recognizable feature, just because it's simple. And so we have a lot of things that kind of get tumbled around in the curation process.
Regarding the curation process, it sounded like a few minutes ago you were pretty strongly against listing profile pictures type NFTs on the Art Blocks platform. Is there any reason for that?
No, we're not strongly against it. It's just that the way that they're generated is not often done in a way that's compatible with the platform. But also there is there's kind of a terrifying, look, you can't prevent this, right? But there's this kind of terrifying opportunistic thing that happens with those. If you kind of hang out in the Punks chat and you hang out in Art Block Talk, where like, project comes out and then everybody kind of convinces everybody to buy it, and then prices go up, and then people sell it, and it just the process is just different. Like, it doesn't feel art forward. It feels like really cool avatars. And it's really interesting, and I'm not going to comment necessarily on specifics, but there's also something very interesting about, like, if you look at the people that yell at me on Discord and their avatars and like which PFP or whatever projects they have, there's a consistency there, and I feel like there's just this thing. It's like this weird entitlement. Look, I'm not begging anybody to buy this stuff. Like, I really think we've created something really awesome and it's fun and I want to buy it. And if you're upset, and you don't buy it, that means I might get to buy it because I didn't get to buy anything on the platform that I created. And if you're then going to come back and yell at me for it, and then also consistently everybody has that same PFP avatar, there's just something, there's something there that kind of makes me feel like it's weird. But if somebody were to create a project like that, that's fully like Algo Bots is perfectly compatible with Art Blocks, was created for Art Blocks, is the same concept. It's a composable project. Crypto Venetians, similar. We would love to host those projects. We are not going to host a 10,000 piece project on the factory. And there is a very, very money-driven mentality on a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, that's like, let's maximize revenues and whatever. And so it doesn't feel right to many to do 10,000, but we are not quite there to do 10,000 yet for a while.
Okay. So Calexo asked a question, which another one I'm sure you're thinking about. What are your thoughts on Art Blocks, mostly, and OpenSea, which is a lot of Art Blocks pieces, pricing people out of Ethereum specifically? My personal thoughts there are, like we've said before, if it wasn't Art Blocks or OpenSea, it would be something else. Gas is going to be high with demand. I think it's a good thing. It's going to push people to L2s and scaling solutions, but I would love to hear your thoughts there. If you have any plans for L2s, if you can chat about that for Optimism or Arbitrum. Anything there.
I mean, first of all, I don't perfectly understand the question in terms of increasing the gas fees. Like, we can't increase the gas fees or decrease the gas fees, right? Like, the users are minting.
I think their thoughts are more the gas wars that cause spikes on the Ethereum network. That was my interpretation.
So increasing the gas wars, the gas war without flashbots is the most fair minting process. Period. There's no more fair way to do it. and if people have been around long enough to realize that when 5 times the value spent goes to the miner than to the artist, there's something wrong there. Like we're pricing it incorrectly. Like it's not that we're trying to be, greedy and take that money, but like, why would the miners get that and the artists get, a fraction of it? Yeah. So what's happened is just that there's been this crazy demand. So if we use one project that like particularly kind of hits home, to me, Alida Sun's Glitch Monster. This is where we really saw that the artist made, I think, $200,000 and the miners made over $1 million. And it just like a little bit of my heart broke because I just have so much like respect for her and like she, and she was super happy. Like, it's not like, but it just, you think it's like, this is not the way that it should be. And so the ideal thing is most people paid 0.1 and then they paid another 0.5 in gas. So most people paid 0.6 for that mint. And so the idea is it should just be 0.6. But then everything after that came and things exploded. And because of that, 0.6 is no longer enough to charge. And so then that's where like these incredibly infuriatingly frustrating manual Dutch auctions come into play, which hopefully will end very soon with automated Dutch auctions. L2 doesn't solve these problems. L2 saves you money on gas unless there's enough people that are competing for it to where it doesn't anymore. I mean, if gas is cheaper on L2 and therefore it only costs a penny to mint something, and somebody's willing to spend $1 so they get their transaction minted faster, somebody's going to spend $2, $5, $30. So maybe the first drop on L2, nobody's going to have any idea how much to dedicate to it. So maybe the first drop on L2, everyone's going to spend $7 on minting. But by the 10th drop, if we still have this insane demand for the pieces, which again, I've said multiple times is not feasible for that to continue like this, then people are going to be spending the same amount of money on gas there too, way more risk because the L2s are not decentralized in the same way that L1 is, right? So the idea that you have potentially $5 million being transacted over the course of 30 seconds on an L2 that has far less validators and infinitely more prone to a 51% attack that somebody could potentially target an Art Blocks drop during one of those attacks. Like, it just doesn't really make sense. What we like about Art Blocks is the immutability, the decentralized aspect of it. You are immediately stripping 90% of that off anytime you take it to an L2. If you remove the gas war and the competitive nature and you leave it as a DA, as a Dutch auction on L2, that's great. It'll save everybody about $50 to $70 per mint because that's the cost of recording the hash string that makes each piece unique onto the Ethereum blockchain. And I would love to save everybody that kind of money. I think that'd be great. But the amount of infrastructure required is not just non-trivial. So we've hired more people and we're definitely exploring them. We're exploring Immutable X, we're exploring Palm, we're exploring all these, but not for Art Blocks to drop on those platforms. Art Blocks is doing okay on Ethereum as kind of like the go-to most decentralized that we can be, but for our partners, for our enterprise partners to deploy on different platforms. If Burger King wanted to do an Art Blocks drop, which we are not talking to Burger King, I just want to make a random one, and they wanted to get NFTs into the hands of their users, if it costs $70 in gas to mint an NFT, that's completely off the table already, right?
Yeah.
So if they go on somewhere like Palm or Immutable X, where it's free or almost free and it's a nickel, it's no longer off the table. And it's actually something, if they wanted to gift, look, I think that's a real big thing about L2s. That's going to kill the L2 in the end, because once there's more activity on the L2, then it becomes unmanageable as well. Like, these things aren't just like magic. They're scaling solutions because they haven't been used yet. Once they start getting clogged, then we end up with the same problems as Ethereum. But if Burger King wanted to give away 1 million NFTs to like, when you open a burger and there's like an NFT in there, you just can't do that on Ethereum, but you can do that on an L2. And
Sure.
That's kind of where we want to be open-minded. And so our vision is to be both L2 and blockchain agnostic. And we will, I've always said from the beginning, I've always wanted to have Art Blocks existing on Flow. The idea that, like, if you're building a CryptoVoxels build and you want to place a little voxel tree on it, and you could either copy paste that same tree over and over, or you could pay $1 for like a generative tree. And so then you have 100 trees in your front yard, but they're all different. and they're $1. So you just spent $10,000 on a plot. You could spend like $100 on the trees and just feel a little bit more real and more unique. Like I see value in that, in paying $1 for a generative output. The only way to do that would be on like Flow or Solana or another like less friction, gas-free or low gas blockchain.
So would you say you're L1 agnostic as long as the decentralization parameters and security is there?
Yes, but we are not as a platform of art. So Art Blocks flagship platform, like where you're seeing the drops today, unless something crazy happened, will stay on Ethereum layer 1. Curated, I would almost be willing to bet, that will always stay Ethereum layer 1. Maybe Factory, we can start experimenting with layer 2. With our new smart contract, we might make it to where the contract itself is L2 agnostic. But why? Yeah, like there's no reason in my mind, no matter how much of a decentralization maximalist that I am, that if people want to operate on other blockchains and they want to use Art Blocks technology, like why would we say no? Like it's up to them. It's their product that is going to suffer from the lack of decentralization, not ours, right? They're just using our technology in our services.
Gotcha. We've seen fractionalized NFTs pick up a bit. I think in some ways that takes a bit away from the art, right? Like it's a lot. It makes it more speculative. I suppose I see the argument that people can't afford a punk and they just want as much as they can afford of one. But what are your thoughts there? Do you have anything against the fractionalization of these NFTs? Do you think it's a great way to distribute the art across a wide community?
So with my personal hat on, like as Erick, I'm a huge nerd for decentralization and money Legos, and I think it's brilliant. Like, but not just fractionalizing art, just fractionalizing NFTs. Yeah. Also, wearing my Erick hat, living in the United States, I'm terrified by the potential for securities laws to get involved. So I will never fractionalize anything, right? Like under no circumstances would I ever even just remotely take that chance. There's just too much going on for me to feel comfortable doing that. And I ultimately think that people do that aren't going to get in trouble, because ultimately this has to be a protocol shift for the United States and for all countries to understand what's going on here and really kind of take a step back. But for now, there's not clarity. There's a lot of uncertainty. My tax situation is already infinitely more complicated than I would like it to be. And so like, I don't need to add to that. I would never fractionalize one of my own art pieces personally, or any of the art pieces that I value from any of the artists, like value. Well, I mean, at this point, all of them that are Art Blocks, because I do think it's a little bit, it's not art forward at all, but it is in that more people get to own it. But like, what does that mean? Does that mean that if 100 people fractionalize it, 100 people get to print it and hang it on their wall legitimately? I mean, you can right click, save, and print whatever the hell you want. It's not like anybody can stop you from printing something and hanging it in your house. So, it's the commercialization of it that gets a little tricky. I think the ability for multiple people to own a grail is incredible and really special. So I'm not against it. Art Blocks as a platform definitely does not endorse it, nor suggest it, nor push it, or anything, because we are 100% art forward and 100% want to respect the artists. And me as an artist, I don't like seeing chromie squiggles fractionalized, right? I'm not saying, it's just like, I'm totally being a hypocrite here. Like, I love the technology. I love what it brings to the table. I think it's great, but I die a little bit inside when one of my chromie squiggles gets fractionalized. And I know that there's a lot of people in the art channels of Art Blocks that feel the same way. And so as a platform, we will absolutely respect that desire, selfishly, because I have that desire, but a lot of the other artists have desire. And really just acknowledge that it exists and it's brilliant technology, but just not really kind of dive into it. And I've had a lot of fractionalization companies reach out and say that they want to partner with us. Well, we don't really partner with people. I feel kind of like that's something that's very easy to look up in our tweets, and you'll see that we literally we get like 10 partnership requests a day, and we literally just say thank you very much, but no, like we'll work with you, but like formal partnership, like that's just not that's not what we do. And endorsing a specific, that's the other thing too. You got multiple fractionalization protocols, like endorsing them is tough. And then the other thing is, the artists do make a 5% royalty on secondary market on OpenSea, and I think soon to be Rarible. I think Rarible is getting really close to starting to like acknowledge those secondary market royalties for Art Blocks. And, the fractionalization of them makes it a little bit more complex and hard to track and trace for the artists. And so I think, it just adds some complexity that goes beyond our day-to-day. And right now we're kind of in a position where we really just have time and bandwidth to focus on like what we've already built and done and expressed, and not get too deep into other stuff.
Sure. So I have a few more questions. We do have about 10 minutes left. So just a reminder from the audience, if there's any last minute questions you want to submit, we'll try to get to those. One question, we haven't really talked too much about the artists that you're working with. I'm sure you speak with them all the time. Is your sense that these are like crypto native artists? Are they just very interested in the medium, or are they like very much into DeFi, into Ethereum, into other blockchains? What are your thoughts there?
The artists on Art Blocks, I'd say, is a 50-50 split of crypto native artists and people that probably deployed executed their first smart contract transaction on Art Blocks. Okay. The crypto native artists, they're all over the place. I mean, we have crypto native artists that are fractionalizing their own NFTs after Art Blocks. Our creator agreement doesn't allow Art Blocks to be used in a DeFi methodology. In other words, like you can't raise money with an Art Blocks drop. You can't use it as a security, like just the drop itself and the piece itself. But then once the NFT is live, it belongs to the Etherverse, and it's not under our control. A lot of artists on Art Blocks have been creating generative algorithms for years, and it's very native for them to jump into Art Blocks. In some cases, they barely even had to modify their Grail script. If you look at Tyler Hobbs's work over the last 4 years, he's been drawing murals on walls that have that Fidenza effect to him. He's been meticulously crafting the Fidenza algorithm for a long time, and then Art Blocks comes around and he basically deployed like the final form of Fidenza, and it's just really beautiful to see how well it's been received. So I think we have a mix of both. We don't talk too much about DeFi in the artist channel. We have artist channels in the Art Blocks Discord that are just for artists, and we don't talk too much about DeFi other than, like I said, some artists just when they see something get fractionalized, they're like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Cool. I think earlier we were talking a bit about Art Blocks wanting to sort of reach more people and not be just focused on blockchain and Ethereum. Do you have any plans, if you can announce them, or just share any details on if you have any plans for any in-person presentations, events, museums for Art Blocks Curated projects?
Well, we are not. So on October 8th in Marfa, Texas, which is in the middle of nowhere, we have about 223 confirmed crypto people from our Discord that are going to be joining us for the opening of the Art Blocks Exhibition Center in Marfa. So that'll be our first kind of public thing, and we will have art on the walls. There will never be enough walls in the world to like host all the art. And Jeff is working on what's going to go on the walls, and so I don't even know which pieces are going to go up or not. I'm actually going to be speaking at a conference called SALT in New York City on the 13th, and then at NFT.nyc on the first week of November. Outside of that, that's kind of all the plans that we currently have in terms of any public-facing anything. Working with a couple of galleries that are wanting to do gallery shows featuring Art Blocks pieces. So I think there's one coming up in San Francisco, which we'll be very excited to share all that. I do think that there will be some really crazy cool physical exhibitions over the course of 2022. It's going to be amazing, and obviously if Art Blocks continues at the pace that it's going, we might be next to the MoMA one day with our own like beautiful building. So I mean, we have no expectations of anything at this point, but it'd be really great to see this kind of art become recognized as art, not just generative art or crypto art, but just art in the outside world.
Cool. So the last question is something I'm very curious about. And I've been wondering. I listened to another talk you did where I think at one point you said you had a collection of every trait of punks. I assume you still don't have every trait. Is that correct?
I do.
Okay.
I was talking to someone yesterday about gold chains because I sold an ape a few weeks ago that had a gold chain, and it was the only gold chain in my collection. And so the only way that I was able to maintain that was to go and buy what I considered to be an incredibly overpriced punk for 60 ETH to get my stupid gold chain back. Obviously, didn't look so stupid this weekend, but who knows with these prices? I mean, it's just all over the place. But yeah, I have in a hardware wallet. I'm sorry, not a hardware wallet. In a steel wallet with private key split over 3 different cities in the state of Texas. In bank deposit boxes, I have a vault, and in that vault, I have an entire set of CryptoPunks. In terms of attributes, everything except for an alien. So there's an ape and zombies and all the attributes.
You have an alien with Flamingo DAO. You remember
10%,
shared.
10% of a share of an alien with Flamingo DAO. I have a full autoglyph set in that same vault, and a bunch of me bits. And same vault, I have a bunch of Art Blocks pieces. And what's kind of beautiful about this is just in 2019, I did something probably relatively reckless, which was I decided to collect a full attribute punks set and spent thousands of dollars, which just seemed completely crazy, right? I mean, I dug into savings and partially took out a loan for it, and a full autoglyph set. And I think the reason I express that is really just to explain like the conviction that I have for this space. Like in 2019. It was the middle of the bears. I mean, it was just like nothing. And I was like, this is going to be this is, in my opinion, having a full punks attribute collection is priceless. It was priceless back then. I think it's borderline priceless now. And I just really, I mean, obviously that's why all this extra security to scatter it all over the state. But I really can't express how like my vision and conviction has not changed since I claimed my first CryptoPunk. There's nothing that has happened, good or bad, in this space that has changed my vision of the future. And this could all fall apart. And it is what it is. But it's just really hard to understand that society will one day just turn around and be like, yeah, that was really fun being able to prove digital ownership of a digital asset. That was really fun being able to like transact money without dealing with a bank. But that's not for us. Let's just move on and go back to like zero transparency, institutional banking, and the art world, where if a piece doesn't sell for $20,000, nobody gives a shit about it because it's not being registered or tracked, or provenance doesn't exist. Sure, let's just ignore all of that and go back to this. It doesn't cross my mind that we could ever get back to that. And so, I'm rambling, but yeah. To answer your question, fascinating. I do have a full attribute set of CryptoPunks.
Perhaps you don't even know the answer to this, but is there any circumstance where you would ever sell part of your collection, one punk even, or like, I know you just sold a punk, but is there any chance you sell your punks? Like, is that even in the future? Is that possible?
Yeah, so I do have extra punks, right, that weren't part of that attribute set.
I'll take an extra punk.
Yeah, so I've been, like with the prices recently, like I had people reach out and offer me ETH for a punk, and I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, it's not on my mind. It's not something I want to do, but it's not on my mind. I sold a punk this weekend for a very specific charitable cause, and so it felt right to do it. But otherwise, I don't. That attribute set, I used to say isn't going anywhere until it ends up at Christie's, or Sotheby's. But now those things are at Christie's and Sotheby's, and I've definitely gotten cold feet too. So that attribute set will hopefully be passed along to my kids or be donated to like a major institution one day. But it's really hard to imagine a price that I would even consider, because I just don't think that these things. If you took the price that it would cost to put that set back together, that would still not be a price that I'd be willing to part with.
Wow.
Not to mention it would take weeks to put it together in terms of like collecting the private
It's like Horcruxes. It reminds me of Harry Potter trying to track down all the Horcruxes. But I see a great question here that I think we should end the call on. So Sander asks, in broadly, what opportunities are you most excited about 3 to 5 years out?
Shit, there's so many things that we're excited about. So this concept of enterprise generative minting for other platforms is something that, as developing Art Blocks, I was like, man, I can't be the only one that would benefit from it. I can't be the only one that thinks that this is kind of special. And so as we've deployed Art Blocks and like people have reached out from a corporate standpoint and saying, hey, like we want to bring Art Blocks to Burger King. Not really. I'm just using that as a placeholder. If you take the incredible success that Crypto Venetians had on Bright Moments Gallery with like a waiting list of 200 people to go and like mint in person, and like this proof of humanity thing where like you actually have to be there to mint. If you take the idea that, you know, I say this often, like I've now moved twice in the last 2 years, and I literally don't know what to do with all the tchotchkes that we've collected in our lives. Like all the stupid souvenirs that were special at that moment because they wanted to remind me of being at the Eiffel Tower or whatever. And now I'm just like, what do I do with this? Like this, you know, I believe that there's a opportunity in humanity to revolutionize the concept of a souvenir into something that doesn't take up space. It doesn't take up like room in a box. And so if you combine those two things, I think there's a really nice opportunity for generative minting to become a new form of souvenir, recognition, tip, party favor, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that in the next 3 or 5 years, Art Blocks flagship with what we're doing with the artists is going to be like, you know, just our flagship core platform, hopefully always representing the best in generative art at the artistic level. And then this enterprise side of Art Blocks is going to be where we're going to enable a company like Disney to, for example, be able to create generative Mickey Mouses at every one of the Disney stores using some kind of, you know, kiosk or vending machine. Or if you're at the zoo and you want to support the giraffes, you slide your credit card and it's $1 and it spits out a generative giraffe with like the spots in different places, whatever that might be. I think that there's an opportunity there. And so actually I know there is, because we have a waiting list of 20 people that are looking to use the enterprise side of our platform already. So we're building out the engineering team and like the business development team to be able to manage those, because for now we've basically been deflecting them, and it feels really crappy to have that validation of people wanting to do it and then being like, sorry, like we just can't do it now. So I really think that there's a huge opportunity there for us and for any other generative minting platform in the future to kind of pull that off. And so we're going to dedicate some resources towards that. The other thing that doesn't apply, I guess, to the collectors, maybe indirectly, is that, you know, I've been in business for many, many years, and I've run a business. I have 15 employees in my tile company, and you know, we just kind of we're a healthy company, but it's never been like one of these companies where we can do crazy things. And I think Art Blocks has raised, or not raised directly, but like, you know, facilitated over $10 million in charity in the last 9 months, and I think that that's unprecedented for a startup. I mean, literally, like, I don't know, maybe if in history one company that's 9 months old has been able to generate that much in residual charitable giving. Maybe so, I don't know. And so we really want to focus on that opportunity by building it really early into our corporate culture. And also, I have this really crazy desire to be like the best company to work at in the United States. It's just something I never thought I'd ever like be a big enough company to do. And if we continue to grow, I think that there's this really cool opportunity for us to literally like just be the coolest place to work, and also offer some of the coolest products and collectibles and art and whatever out there. That's kind of the wacky 3 to 5 year vision.
That's awesome. Well, with that, I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much, Erick, for jumping on. More importantly, thank you for everything you've done for Ethereum, for the art space in general, for NFTs. I think whether you're interested in generative art or not, like, you can't deny what Art Blocks has done. So thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all the questions. And I don't know if you compiled these questions somewhere else, I'd be happy to kind of textually reply to them and give some feedback.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. Thank you, everybody.